My name is Valerie Williams, and my content is Queen.
You should know that you can't win with just the king on the board. Content is queen. Listen, you'll see.
All right, everybody. Welcome to Content is Queen. I am super excited to talk to my client, and I would love to say now friend, Miss Valerie Williams. She is the founder and managing partner of Converge, based in Cali. Welcome.
Thank you so much, Layla. It's so good to be here. How are you doing today?
I'm doing wonderful now that I'm talking to you.
Awesome.
We've talked about the power of Black women and just women in general when it comes to making decisions, and whether it's marketing, advertising, communications, DEI, the space that you hold. I feel like there's a new revolution that's happening and buzzing around Black women that I love. And what I'm seeing from my vantage point is that we are turning into content creators at a very, very fast rate, including you now podcast host yourself.
Yes.
So I would love to talk to you about your journey, and why did you decide to start Converge with Valerie Williams to help with, to broaden your message and your platform?
Absolutely. Well, thank you again for having me, Layla. It's such a pleasure to be here. I'll tell you a little bit about Converge and sort of how we think about content. You've been such a good partner to us in terms of pushing us to really use content to get the word out about Converge. So we love working with you. For those who don't know about Converge, we are a consulting firm, a boutique high touch firm focusing on diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. We work with organizations that are kicking off DEI journeys for the first time. So we often help them with education and learning through workshops and designing a plan or a strategy to help them beyond those workshops. So we have a team of specialists and consultants that work together to achieve those missions for our companies. And we realized that in order to do the work that we really want to do, it's important for us to scale. And so for us, using content, using digital marketing and social media was one way that we really wanted to scale these mindsets, these behaviors, because our hypothesis is that if we get people really understanding the value of DEI early, then those mindsets and those behaviors will scale with them over time. So that's a little bit about Converge.
I love it. So tell us about Converge with Valerie Williams, your podcast. How do you see this in your marketing toolbox to really expand your reach and reach out to individuals that, are not currently in your portfolio?
Absolutely. So we launched Converge with Us, the podcast, a few months ago. And my goal with the podcast is really to reach those busy executives, those busy managers, busy people in the workplace, period, that could spend 10 or 15 minutes to get a quick tip or some skills, some enablement that they can take back to their workplace. So we really focus on what are the sort of hot topics right now going on with DEI, going on in the world, and how do we give those leaders, those executives, those managers, some guidance on how to approach these different topics. So we started off with kind of basics around how to build a general DEI plan, and we've been going really more into specific areas as it relates to setting goals. How do we hold people accountable? Those type of things. But it's really for busy folks in the workplace that can take 10 minutes to get some guidance through that podcast.
I love it. I am excited because this is my first podcast with Content is Queen. So I live vicariously through you and helping you launch your podcast. And I feel like these other vehicles to engage with your target audience is so important, like email marketing and social media. All of those tools really help you expand your reach. And when you talk about social media, there's a lot of, people get nervous when I say social media, like, oh, this is too much. I can't, it's too much. but
Mhm,
I really see all the platforms as a vehicle to just to get your content out there. How
mhm.
do you see DEI, just the industry? I know education is one, but how do you use social media to really put a face to who Converge is and you yourself?
Absolutely, absolutely. Well, first it's working with you all to figure out what is the right content to get out. So we try to have top of mind things that are happening like Black History Month, commemorative moments, International Women's Day, those commemorations that organizations may be trying to celebrate and trying to help them do that in a way that's not performative, in a way that's authentic. So we use social media to do that. We now are moving into kind of introducing the Converge team, and as I mentioned, everyone's our specialists, and so we want to work with them to elevate their platforms and really help them with their journeys as well. So for us, social media beyond the education, it's really about, again, we want to scale these mindsets and these behaviors and these practices. So how do we put out the right content to allow people to engage in this work? DEI can be so complex and so nuanced and sometimes like not so safe space to be in for people to feel like they can learn in a way that they can be vulnerable and learn. And so we try to have an approachable way to engage folks with different types of media.
Yeah, and it also puts a face to an intimidating topic. Because if
Hmm.
I know I'm talking to you about this, I'm gonna feel a lot better, right?
Hmm.
I see myself. So definitely, showing the expertise, but then also a welcoming environment.
Hmm.
That's something that's definitely important. And you talked a lot about scaling, right? And I love the fact that you have workshops available on demand as needed. Talk to me about how people can engage with your workshops and where do you see the workshops fitting into an organization's toolkit around DEI?
Absolutely. So we think about sort of education in three different ways. So first is sort of like company-wide education. And the purpose of that is to start getting the organization ready for the changes that you want to bring about. And so we start with very foundational concepts. What is unconscious bias? We have a DEI foundations course where we just unpack all of these terms that are floating around and how do we grasp some of our beliefs and our own definitions around these works, and like how do we define harm in the workplace, what does privilege look like in the workplace. We just really try to address those head on. So that's one way that we think about education. The second is really about enablement. So, for the people that are trying to be practitioners, for our HR folks, for our people sitting on a DEI committee, how can we give them the tools and the frameworks to be the internal change agents that they are aiming to be? And then lastly, we think about training. And so, this is how are we really letting people know about the behaviors that we're expecting of them. And then how do we then hold them accountable beyond that training? So I think about inclusive leadership training as an example for leaders and managers, and then rolling that training into a performance management system. And so education, learning, enablement should be a part of any organizational's toolkit. One of those areas may be right for an organization at different times. And so we have multiple ways that we can engage. So we have live workshops. We also have a Converge Academy that we launched where we have some self-guided courses where people can engage and go deeper on some of those topics as well. So those are just a couple of ways. We've done custom workshops as well where we design custom frameworks, leadership frameworks for organizations as an example, and roll out a manager training. So we try to work with an organization based on what their education needs are at the time.
So basically, come to Converge and you get a ready-made package, or you can get it tailored, which I love because every organization is different with unique requirements and needs. So that's great. So the content is flexible and dynamic, so
Mhm.
that it can insert into where it needs to go easily. How did you get into this space, right? Because DEI to me, I mean, it's not new, but it's somewhat new. What was your journey like and how did you end up here with your own agency?
Absolutely, absolutely. My early career days was really more in supply chain and operations. I'd studied industrial engineering, I went into this sort of leadership program. And for me, that work was just too far from the people. I felt like I wanted to be closer to helping individuals. And so I went to graduate school and really focused on human capital and organizational design and effectiveness. And from there, I went into the tech industry. So I spent about 8 years at various tech companies in the Bay Area. I was at Google, and I launched my actual DEI career at Airbnb. So while being on the recruiting team, leading an employee resource group, I really joined the cross-functional effort around product inclusion that Airbnb was happening. I know people remember hashtag Airbnb while Black and all the like discrimination on the platform issues. That was the beginning of my DEI career. And so I helped build that diversity and belonging program. I left there and went to Stripe, the fintech organization, and was global head of diversity there. And from those experiences, I really just felt like we needed to start earlier in organizations formation. So we were 1,000 employees or 1,500 employees trying to do DEI. And I was like, we need to get to the like 80% in organizations and really start there. And so that was the birth of Converge. And I knew that I could be valuable to those organizations, but I just didn't know what that deliverable or what that actual thing would be. And so we've been spending a few years getting really crisp on those deliverables and what we can offer to our clients. So that was the story of Converge and how it happened. I really, again, wanted to work with early stage organizations doing this for the first time. Like, how do we help them design something that's authentic to them? That's really what motivated me.
I love that. So if someone would like to step into the DEI space, right? Is there, I guess, a skill set that, or a personality or a characteristic that individual needs to embody to be successful in this space? Because I feel like, one, you definitely have to have thick skin, but also a curiosity about the work that you're doing, so that you don't get so narrow focused that you're not also open to hearing different perspectives. But from your vantage point, is there a skill set or a characteristic that an individual should hold before getting into a role like this?
Such a good question. It's such a good question. I think about the kind of certification programs that are popping up now. One thing about DEI is that there's no centralized body that's saying that you need to go through this program or anything like that to do DEI. So people come to the work with different lenses. My lens was very much a practitioner lens. And so if there is one skill set I would say is the ability to have like a nuanced mind and to be flexible. So we have to be able to push an organization to change, but we also have to meet the organization where it is. And so you have to strike this balance of being consultative, but also being a change agent at the same time, and really understanding your client to know when to push and when to not push. So I would say that's an important skill set. And self-care, honey. I mean, I feel like everybody needs therapy and trauma training and all of that. So
yes, in 2022, I think if you don't have a therapist on deck, Lord have mercy. I completely agree with that.
Mhm.
When you look back on your career, I always ask my guests this question. If you could talk to young Valerie, like as you were entering into this new career path, what would you tell her?
Ooh, such a good question. I love that. Um, I would tell her to relax and trust herself.
Oh, yes, I like that.
Because I feel like when you're young in your career, and I still think this is valuable, you're gunning, you're like putting all the effort in, you're doing all the things. Sometimes you're worried about your career path. It's sort of like the effort that you're putting in is gonna pay off. And then the aspect of trusting yourself. I mean, I completely run my business off of my intuition, which is bonkers, right? Of course, we do all of our planning and we put all the things, but I never thought about it like that. And so the more that you can garner self-awareness, the more that you can trust yourself in your decision makings and to lean into that intuition, that's really going to serve you. So I would tell her that.
I love that, because I think the one thing as women, no matter what industry you're in, this imposter syndrome, people throw that word around a lot. It's so
Mhm.
true. And I'm in my 40s, and I really did not step into who I am until I started saying, stop blocking everyone else's opinion, and
Mhm.
yours is what matters, right? And so
Mhm.
I love that you would say to trust yourself, because that's such a major life lesson that I think all women, no matter if you are an executive or in front of the camera or behind the camera, it doesn't matter. Marketing, communications, DEI, all of these roles, we're seeing more and more women show up in these senior executive roles, which I love. But I know the self-care, we need to step that up. Everyone should definitely have a therapist, because I'm like, it's a new day.
It's a
In
new day.
2022.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
what can executives, because I know that's your target audience, expect from Converge in 2022? We're almost halfway through the year. Goodness gracious.
How is time flying this fast? Goodness.
Oh, so what's next?
Yeah, so we're in year three as an organization, which is wild. And so I spent this quarter really working on our internal operations, really also thinking about what is the value that we're providing to our clients and how can we provide more value. And so we're thinking about thought leadership as an example of where we want to lean in. Speaking of content, different types of thought leadership. We're also thinking about this founder community and investor community. So from private equity to VCs, there's this interesting conversation happening around ESG and environmental and social governance and the intersection of DEI and ESG. And so we really want to provide really good services to that founder and investor community. So we're really leaning in there. So I would say that's where you're going to see us the back half of the year, really trying to figure out, we understand how to help a 100-person organization. How do we help that 5-person organization or that 10-person organization to design with an inclusive mindset early on? So that's where we'll be leaning. So look out for more of that content and that thought leadership there.
I love it. And for everyone that's listening, make sure you check out my girl, Valerie. Her content is amazing. And I'm not saying it because our team produces it. I'm saying it because just listening to it in the edit process and the content really helps me frame things. Even though you're not talking to me directly, there are so many gems that you drop in your podcast that I love. Amazing newsletter as well. Workshops, if that's where you are looking to get a more intimate, detailed reflection of where your organization is standing under the theme of DEI. I highly encourage you to check out Converge. Thank you so much, Valerie, for your time today.
Thank you,
And I
Layla.
appreciate you and all the great work that you're doing.
Thank you, Layla. We appreciate you as well. And congrats on your podcast as well.